Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Hosts and Their Movies. So all this month, I've been watching movies that have been hosted by horror hosts. Some I have in physical media form. Some I've been watching on YouTube or archive.com. And I've been having a blast with it, learning about different horror hosts. It's great to have some of the physical copies. If any of you saw my live stream with the Newly Dads, they convinced me or shamed me. No, convinced me. Well, maybe shamed me into to getting a physical release of a certain horror host whose show I've never watched live, even though I love the guy. Live on Shudder on Friday nights. I wonder who that is. These are I'm going to do two horror hosts today. These are younger guys, appear to be younger guys. Very enthusiastic, very creative guys. It just sort of, man, it makes you just feel tingly all over knowing that a younger generation has kind of picked up the mantle and run with it as far as horror hosts goes. I mean, these guys are doing such a great job. So let's get right to it. I've been aware of both of these guys for quite a while. Let's start with Dario Eville and the Mausoleum of Terror. He does a great job. Great makeup. He's got the fangs and everything, kind of different backgrounds. I mean, these younger guys, they know how to do the effects and everything. I gotta learn this stuff, to be honest with you, but he does a great job. So I have watched, it looks like he's been on YouTube for about 5 years. Recently, I just watched Nightmare Castle that premiered about a week ago. So that's the film I'm going to review, a very loose review in just a moment. But he's done movies like Kathy's Cursed. 2 months ago, I watched Bloodlust. That's like a kind of a Most Dangerous Game type movie. I've seen it several times before with the young Robert Reed. Snake People. That's a rough one with Karloff to get through, but, the fact that he hosted it made it a lot easier. Even going back like a while ago, I wanted to rewatch The Fiend Without a Face. That he had that one on about 2 years ago. That's a favorite of mine. If you've never seen that, that is a fun movie for this time of year. It's got great atmosphere, great tension, great sound effects. In fact, you don't see anything until the end, the last 15 minutes. And then the fiends show up, they materialize, and all hell breaks loose. And it's gorier than you think a movie from 1958 would be. And so watch that one on the Dario Eville channel. The whole presentation is an hour and 18 minutes. So it's a very short. So Nightmare Castle is a 1965 movie. It's an hour and 30 minutes long. Apparently there's a version called Night of the Doomed, which is an hour and 37 minutes long, uncut. I'm not sure if that was the version that Mario showed because his okay, not Mario, Dario. The director is Mario Keanu. Okay, that's sorry Dario. No, I'm not sure if that's the version he showed. The thing about this movie is, and the thing about Dario's presentation of it is, sometimes for movies that are riffed or have things pop up during the movie, like obviously they did on Mystery Science Theater, riff tracks. Mummy and the Monkey does it mostly with sound effects. Dario does it with popping up occasionally. A little bit more in this one than I think maybe in some of his previous movies that he's hosted. It was highly entertaining. I'll talk about some of the clever things he does in this one in a moment. But it wasn't so much that it takes away from the enjoyment of the film. So even though this was the first time watching, and I like this kind of movie, and I'm a big fan of Barbara Steele, who looks fantastic in this movie and creepy. Man, it's just some of the best eyes that have ever been on the big screen. Having said that, I would definitely rewatch this film again. It's that good. Maybe not the very best of some of Barbara Steele's Italian films that she appeared in, but it's very entertaining, and she plays a dual role. So she's a brunette and then she's a blonde. So, I mean, and just as in Black Sunday, where she has the cover of that movie, right? With the iconic face. She's got a look in this with her hair down half of her face as she's kind of walking around this creepy castle. And it's just good stuff, really good stuff. Essentially, you have a guy who lives in a castle. He's got an older woman who's a servant played very well by Helga Line. And as we discover, she is made up to be like an older woman. It's pretty good makeup. Pretty good effects all around for what you see. And he catches his wife cheating. This is very early on. And he tortures her and her lover. And it's pretty gruesome. I mean, he's pretty rough stuff. I mean, he does. Well, this enables him to help his housekeeper matron, played by Helga Linne, become younger. Okay, so now she's, she has a much younger appearance. Not an unattractive woman herself, I might add. But he leaves, he comes back, and he has now married the sister. I think her name was Muriel. Barbara, the brunette version of Barbara Steele. The sister's blonde, and is very sort of innocent and unaware, and the housekeeper matron lady is like, "What are you doing here?" I won't really go too much into a plot, but eventually he starts to conspire, and he's got he's got a laboratory downstairs, and he's got some plans, and they're not good, and a local doctor sort of gets involved and starts to get curious about the goings on there, and he decides to take a few people out, and maybe somebody gets taken out by accident. There's a whole setup where it's an electrocution deal, where it's a very elaborate thing that he does, and just watching him set it up, you're like, you bastard, The guy's played by, so Paul Muller plays Dr. Stephen Arrowsmith, and Barbara Steele plays Muriel Arrowsmith and her sister. And at the end, kind of like Something to Tide You Over from Creepshow. The original couple, they're not sort of done with Dr. Arrowsmith. At one point, Muriel's sister, the blonde, actually wakes up and thinks she's Muriel, and the doctor's trying to hold her down, and she's spazzing out. So she starts to sort of take on some of the personality of her deceased sister. There's little MacGuffins about like finding earrings that belong to Muriel, and the doctor starting to piece things together, and some of the story doesn't add. Anyway, it's just a ghostly revenge story in a castle with Barbara Steele. I mean, that's your evening of viewing entertainment right there. So go ahead and watch the Dario Eville Mausoleum of Terror presentation. Go ahead and take in some of the effects that he uses. He always has like a spooky background with some candelabras, and I love a good mausoleum or crypt setting. And what he does in this one is he pops in unexpectedly sometimes, and it's pretty funny. The thing about not having the constraints of being on television and being tied to the commercial breaks is it doesn't have that rhythm of, introduction, movie, commercial, host segment, movie, commercial, host segment. It doesn't have that sort of rhythm where everything is spaced out pretty evenly. So he pops in like a few times within like 10 minutes, and then there's a good 20 minutes of just movie, and then he pops in very unexpectedly again. Sometimes with just like a funny facial reaction to what's going on. Somebody gets slapped in here, and he pops up with this look, and it's really funny. And then he also does something, since you have a character that is older and then becomes younger, he goes into this thing about like skincare products, and he's got different names for them. It's pretty priceless and very clever. So I've got to say, Dario Eville did a great job on this episode. You got to check it out. It's pretty funny. Now, if you go back and watch Dario Eville's presentation of Fiend Without a Face and look in the comments, you'll see my comment, of course. But you also see a comment from Paraspooky, and he says, "This is one hell of a last 10 minutes. I'm showing this month myself. More people need to see this movie." I would agree with that. So next, we're going to jump over to Paraspooky. Paraspooky is a channel that features Dr. Whatchamacarcus, who is in front of a gruesome kind of a background with skulls and candles and so forth, and he's got quite an appearance, the hat, the eyes, the face. You have to check it out. And this channel is really interesting because he does entire movies. The movies that I'll be discussing is The Video Dead, one of those movies that I heard about. It's from 1987, an hour and 30 minutes long, low-budget zombie schlocky type film, perfect for a horror host to cover. But he also kind of breaks the mold a bit. Again, YouTube giving you the freedom to sort of do whatever you want. And he'll do cartoons and shorter specials, half an hour. He had a creepy Pink Panther cartoon on, that really brought back memories. He said some of those old cartoons from like the 30s and 40s with the dancing skeletons and with, no dialogue, and kind of wonder if the animators were on some kind of hallucinogenic substances. So he's done some of those. He'll do like Return of the Killer Tomatoes, the movie, and then an episode of the cartoon. So he does some different stuff. But this episode, he did The Video Dead. And this was a pretty fun movie. The movie itself would be a great double feature with The Dead Next Door, which is the low-budget zombie film that The Mummy and the Monkey covered on this Halloween special, which I've already reviewed. These two specials, this Halloween special and this episode of Paraspooky, would be a great double feature in and among themselves. I think I like The Dead Next Door a little bit better than The Video Dead, but The Video Dead had its moments. I mean, this is the kind of film you start watching it, and you think you know what you're going to expect. I thought you end up getting a little more, and I did kind of appreciate it. Essentially, you have a TV that is delivered to the wrong address. It's supposed to be delivered to like the Office of Paranormal Occult Research or something like that. It shows up at this kid's house and it unleashes some zombies. An older guy named Joshua shows up and tries to get the TV, but they pretty much say, "We're busy, get out of here." And after the zombies break out and start doing zombie things, he comes back and the young guy decides to say, realizes this guy was right all along, so he kind of helps him fight the zombies. It's kind of an interesting angle that it's connected to this TV. There's some pretty good effects. There's one zombie head coming out of the TV, which is really pretty good. And then they take off into the woods at one point, and just as you're thinking, well, now it's kind of going to be more of a conventional zombie movie, they introduce some kind of rules on how you can deal with the zombies that we don't often see in zombie films. So there's some pretty clever stuff. There's a pretty funny scene when Joshua ties up our young hero, and who's played by Michael St. Michaels, I believe, and uses him as bait, and that doesn't really, he lets it go on for a while. There's a whole crowd of zombies under him, like trying to grab his feet and everything. He lets it go on like a lot longer than the young guy would like. So all in all, a really fun, low-budget zombie film hosted by Paraspooky. The entire episode is about an hour and 31 minutes and 31 seconds long, and the movie itself is about an hour and 30 minutes long, so he gets right to it. There is at least one interruption that I remember in the middle, where he does stop for a commercial break. Of course, he's making this up, and he inserts a classic commercial, I'm guessing from the 70s, with one Mr. Gene Wilder, which, I mean, you have to see it. I don't remember it, actually, to be honest with you, but it's just full of nostalgia. I mean, the product was on TV all the time back in the day, and it's a pretty funny commercial. They don't make commercials like that anymore. It's pretty clever. So that's a lot of fun, and his final wrap-up is pretty amusing and fun. So definitely a good presentation by Paraspooky, Dr. Whatchamacarcus. Check out his channel, and check out Dario Eville's Mausoleum of Terror channels. Pick out a movie this October, and one that you haven't seen before maybe, and just have fun with it. These guys are a lot of fun. What are your thoughts on either one of these two horror hosts who are absolutely killing it? And what are your thoughts on either one of the films that I discussed tonight? And let me know in the comments below, and come back again soon for some more horror hosts and their movie reviews. Thanks.